A faceless, nameless killer, like something out of a horror movie, a shadow, a phantom, often blending into the community and disguising himself as an ordinary guy. Maybe he's your next door neighbor, your coworker. These killers are able to hide their true nature so well that sometimes they're never found out. So, like with many stories about multiple murders where the crimes are spread out over a large period of time, there are several different points in time we could open today's story. But for now, we're actually going to open our story in 1988, on a muggy night in early August at the peak of summer. Jane Borowski is 6.5 months pregnant. Things have been strained lately with her boyfriend Ted, and they've been strained ever since she broke the news about her pregnancy. On August 6th, Jane and Ted had plans to spend the day at the Cheshire County Fair in Swansea, so Jane decides to drive to the fair. A little late, maybe, but Saturday night is just getting started, and that's when the fair festivities are in full swing, so Jane has fun. Jane then leaves the fair. She's in her Firebird driving home on Route 10. The very pregnant Jane then starts to think about how refreshing a Pepsi would be right about now. So Jane pulls into the parking lot and parks in front of the store. She fishes through her purse and finds just enough change, so she goes to the vending machine. Afterwards, she gets back to the Firebird with her cold can of cola and cracks it open. Just then, headlights sweep into the parking lot. And the next thing she knows, he's standing next to her open window. He speaks to Jane. The interaction catches Jane off guard, and before she can think of what to say in response, the man suddenly grabs her by the arm and pulls her door open, and he says, "Come with me." Now Jane fights. She asks this man who he is and what he wants. She tells him she's 7 months pregnant. She begs him to leave her alone. He then produces a knife and warns her that if she doesn't get out of the car, he'll cut her. Jane fights some more and tries to run, and before she knows it, she is being stabbed. Nearly 30 stab wounds later, the attack ends. Only Jane does not die. Miraculously, despite a cut jugular vein, a collapsed lung, and numerous severed tendons, she manages to make her way back to her car, back onto Route 10, and toward a friend's house. But as she's speeding towards her friend's house, she sees another vehicle up ahead. And as she gets closer, she sees that it's the Jeep Wagoneer. She's driving behind the man that attacked her. Up to the left, her friend's house comes into view, and she pulls a sharp turn onto the lawn. She runs up and bangs on the front door, and her friend opens it to find her friend, Jane, shaken and covered in blood, in desperate need of medical attention. It was at this point that Jeep Wagoneer does a U-turn and slowly passes by the front of the friend's house. The driver watches as Jane's friend attends to her, and he can see that Jane sees him. He then drives on, disappearing into the dark of night, never to be seen again. Investigators in Sullivan County, one county up, didn't believe the attack on Jane was targeted, and they also didn't believe it was an isolated incident, because for the past 4 years, authorities in that area had been hunting what they believed was a serial killer. A killer who would come to be known as the Connecticut River Valley Killer. The investigation began with a pair of disappearances in 1984. A pair of fishermen made what true crime shows like to call a grisly discovery: Bernice's skeletal remains in a stream. This was an area that Bernice's killer likely knew well. The previous September, the remains of a 27-year-old nurse named Ellen Freed were found only a few thousand yards away from where Bernice had been discovered. The condition of both skeletons led the coroner to conclude that the cause of death had been the same: multiple stab wounds. So the last person to hear from Ellen Freed had been her sister. Ellen had called her up from a payphone in the early morning hours of July 20th, 1984, which was just 2 months after Bernice disappeared. And it was from a payphone outside a convenience store called Leo's One Stop Market that Freed spoke her last known words. Midway through the conversation, Freed mentioned to her sister that a strange car had just crept through the otherwise empty parking lot of the closed convenience store. She put the receiver down for a minute, leaving her sister on hold to go turn over her car's engine to make sure it would start. And then she returned to the phone and talked for a few more minutes before telling her sister good night. And then she vanished. Sometime after daybreak, Ellen's car was found locked and abandoned 4 miles away from the market on a lonely dirt road surrounded by woods. A few days after that, Ellen's coworkers at Valley Regional Hospital reported that she had not shown up for work for 2 consecutive days, which was highly uncharacteristic of her. And by the time a pair of hunters stumbled upon Ellen Freed's skeleton on September 19, 1985, Bernice had been missing for over a year, and yet another local woman had gone missing earlier that summer, when 2 loggers found her remains in some woods in West Unity. And again, from what the medical examiner could tell, this victim had been stabbed to death. It leaves little doubt of a common perpetrator, but the stabbing death of Linda Moore was different. Linda Moore was a 36-year-old housewife whose husband had left her home alone on the afternoon of April 15th, 1986, as he went to work. But when her husband returned home that afternoon, he found Linda dead on the floor, riddled with stab wounds. So unlike the other victims, Linda Moore was stabbed to death in her own home and in the middle of the afternoon. Now, 5 knife murders and a 6th knife attack over 4 years in the same general area seemed to make it highly unlikely that multiple offenders were responsible. These days, it's looking unlikely that any of the Connecticut River Valley killings will be solved. Scant forensic evidence, together with what seems to be no official interest in the case and inadequate funding, allow these investigations to continue stagnating. And that's the story of the Connecticut River Valley Killer, which is one serial killer case that may very well be unsolvable at this point in time.